Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about initial setup of DigitalOcean droplets. Now, droplets are essentially just small virtual machines that are run on DigitalOcean servers, and they allow you to do cool things like web scraping or small web servers. Basically, they're very important for a lot of small projects in data science. And while there are a number of companies that will host similar virtual machines, DigitalOcean is just the company I prefer. It's what I have the most experience with, and I've had good experiences in the past. So let's just jump into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up some SSH keys on our local machine. So if you're not aware, SSH is the protocol that you can use to log into a server remotely, and SSH keys are a way of doing that securely and efficiently. So first we're going to make sure that we don't already have any SSH keys existing on our system, and we don't. So to fix that, we're just going to run ssh -keygen -trsa, and that means type RSA. So RSA is the encryption algorithm that's going to be used to generate the key pair. And we're going to get a default directory of .ssh/idrsa, and that's perfect. So we're going to enter through. We're not going to use a passphrase just for simplicity, and because I think it's a little redundant on a safe local machine like this. And there we go. So now we've got our public and private keys created. And the next thing we have to do is we're just going to run a quick cat on our public key. And this is going to print it out to the console so that we can copy it. And with that copied, we're going to log in to our DigitalOcean account. If you don't already have one, it's pretty simple to set up. You basically just need your billing information. You're not going to be charged any monthly fees for just having an account. You're only charged on what resources you use. And pricing starts at 0.7 cents an hour. So if you wanted to create a server real quick just to follow along with this, it would literally be a couple pennies. So if you want to do that real quick, go ahead and do that. And once you have your account, just come back to this video. So once you have a DigitalOcean account, you're going to want to pop down into settings down here. And when you're in there, you're going to go to security and press add new SSH key. Now, I'm not going to do it because that's a lot of stuff to blur. I don't really want to show my privacy settings to you all, but it's very simple. You will find it very easily if you just paste in what you copied and then name it whatever you want. I'm going to name mine example, so when we're doing stuff later, you'll know that's it. And once you're done, come back to your default project screen, which is just your name. So here I am, Evan Mead, default project. So I'm going to cut away quick to copy in my SSH key. Okay, so now that we're back, I'm going to, in my default project, just click Get Started with a Droplet. And this is going to take us to the initial configuration screen for that machine. So we're going to select our operating system. I'm sticking with Ubuntu. And then we get to choose the hardware that we're running. So there's a lot of different configurations listed here. Some of them have a lot of CPU cores, some of them have a lot of RAM or storage, but we're just going to stick with the cheapo option, which is basic, $5 a month, 0.7 cents an hour, and it's enough to run small tasks remotely. And then we're going to scroll down, choose our data center region. We'll just choose New York 1. And then we're going to go down to authentication here. And the two options you're going to be presented with are SSH keys or password. I would say, unless you have a really specific reason to use a password, always use an SSH key. It is far more secure, reliable, and frankly, more convenient. So we already have it configured. You can see down here we've got example. So we're just going to click the box next to it. And what that's going to do is it's going to automatically populate that SSH key in the allowed users list for our root account. So when we log into our remote server for the first time, we can do that directly using SSH. So now that we have that, we're going to scroll down. We're going to name this. We're also going to name this example for simplicity. And we're going to create Droplet. So now we're just going to wait a second while it spins up our server. Okay, so it only took about a minute for it to create our new server, and here you can see we've got the green light, so it's online and active, and we've got our IP. So we're going to click to copy that, Then we're going to return to our terminal, and we're just going to clear it out. And now we're going to run SSH root at that IP. And it's going to ask us if we trust that host. Yes, we just created it. And there we go. So now it's dropped us into the root shell on that server. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to create a non-root user so that we don't always run things with elevated privileges. So we're going to use add user emid, and it's going to ask for a password. You're going to have to use that for sudo, but in a second here we're going to configure login so that you're using SSH again. And we can enter any details we want down here. Honestly, I skipped most of these. They're not important. And there we go. So now we have a default user named emid, but he doesn't have any privileges yet, so he can't use sudo. So to fix that, we're going to run user mod, and we're going to append to group sudo, and that is operating on emid. And finally, we need to configure SSH login for emid. So we're simply going to use rsync to copy our allowed SSH keys that we configured automatically with DigitalOcean into the home directory of emid. So now all of emid's profile, privileges, and login should be set up. So before we exit out of here, we're going to configure the firewall quickly. Now, one of the downsides of using a digitally hosted virtual machine like a Droplet is that the providers typically rotate through blocks of IP addresses for a given amount of time. So they become quite well known, and they can be targets for remote hackers. So a firewall is just a good way to close off some of those avenues of attack. So first we're going to run ufw app list. This is going to show us which apps are going to want special permission through the firewall. Now obviously OpenSSH is what we're using right now, so we definitely want to let that through. So we're going to do ufw allow OpenSSH, and then ufw enable yes. And you see that our session didn't get cut out because we updated the rules to allow SSH through. And so finally, if we run ufw status, we can see that we have an activated and allowed OpenSSH connection. So everything is looking good. So now I just want to take a second to show a bit of why configuring the security side of stuff is important. So why are we wasting time with SSH and the firewall and all that? Well, if we run last B, this will show the last failed login attempts on our server. And as we can see, none of these users even exist on here. So no one should be trying to log into them. And if we just copy one of these addresses and then go to this site, there's a lot of sites like it, but this is the one I've used. We can just look it up and see that this is definitely an abusive IP. So it's been reported by thousands of people. It's basically just trying to brute force its way into any system it can. So it's definitely spam, and it's just going to show that it's worthwhile to set up security right when you create a new droplet. So now that we have configured our user and our firewall, we're just going to exit out of here and set up some convenience methods on our end. Because it's really hard to memorize an IP number, or especially multiple if you're using a lot of systems, we're going to create some aliases that make it easier to work with it from our command line. So if we do nano on bash rc, which is our bash profile, we can scroll all the way down to the end here, and we can create some new things for our example. So first we're going to export example IP equals our IP of our droplet. And if we paste that in, then we can have alias example equals SSH emid at our example IP. And if we write that out and exit, we're going to resource our bash rc so that when we run example, it will drop us right down to our new user on our remote server. So that's pretty much it. That's what I run on basically any droplet I create. I set up my non-root user with privileges and SSH. I configure the firewall, and then I set up aliases on my local machine just to make it a bit easier to use. Now, in the future, I'll be making more videos about how to use droplets for specific applications, such as web scraping or port forwarding, but I wanted to make a dedicated video just to cover some of the logistics of actually configuring and using these services. So leave any questions in the comments. I'll leave links to some useful articles that some of this was based on and some things that I learned a lot from. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.